the reality is we are now non-Australian. We really are. We've left the Australia Corporation. Australia means Norfolk Island, Christmas Island, Cocos Island, Keely Island, includes no further territory. Well, that's nothing to do with me. I might have been deceived all my life. I'm thinking that was my nationality, but the fact was it's a corporation, and it's never been a country. It's always been a corporation. It's just been passed on from one corporation to the next this entire time, and they never had a right to access the land. Not like the Americans, where you guys had a kinetic battle, shoulder to shoulder with the Indians to fight the redcoats to defend the land and soil. So we haven't done that here. So it's slightly different, a bit more technical, but it was interesting to be to actually hear and somebody define me as a non-Australian. I thought, well, somewhat mixed feelings, but yes, I feel proud of that. Yeah, great. I'm no longer recognised as part of that corporation, and I am recognised as a living man of another jurisdiction. That's all I wanted. Of a better jurisdiction, a much better jurisdiction. So yeah, I do. As you know, I sort of tend to repeat myself, Nithi, because it goes back to the same situation, and people, like the video you played, people losing their land. They've been on that property for over 100 years, and they can't. They're trying to fight it, and who can blame them? But I think it's very important that they know what they are fighting. So I do tend to repeat myself, but if you don't mind, I'll run through my spiel so people can get their head round what's happened, what's just happened in the last 5 years, because it's still April, so it's quite important. So if we go back 5 years this month, exactly 5 years this month, actually 8 days ago. So 8 days ago, 5 years ago, so on the 20th of April 2020, oil plummeted to minus $38 a barrel. Let me repeat that, it's extremely bloody important. On the 20th of April 2020, oil plummeted to minus $38 a barrel, April 2020. It was 3 or 4 weeks before that they announced the pandemic. Okay? So just work out the timeline here, guys. Stay with me. So they announced the pandemic in March 2020, and it was all bells and whistles and screaming and yelling. And then during all that chaos, some 4 weeks later, oil plummeted to minus $38 a barrel. And during that time, you had a guy in charge of your country, but also my country when you think about it, because the Australia Corporation is owned by the America Corporation, and the same guy is the CEO of all the subsidiaries, and so it's very important that we keep a close eye on American politics. So you've got a former oil baron, okay, bear that in mind, the former oil baron who's made a lot of money from the oil industry, so obviously has his finger on the pulse, a former oil baron in charge of the America Corporation, or US Inc., at a time when oil plummets to minus $38 a barrel. Considering the US dollar is pinned to oil, that's why it's called the petrodollar, and all the allied countries are pinned to oil, because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. Neglects to mention to 350 million Americans, oh, by the way, the economy has just tanked. So we've all just endured 5 years of the longest liquidation on earth. It's unprecedented what we've just endured and are still enduring. It just amazes me that we call it a pandemic. It's a bankruptcy, and you guys in your country, in your small towns, and just like in all our small towns, I've done a lot of travelling this year. Empty shop after empty shop after empty shop after empty shop after empty shop. For lease, for sale, for lease, for sale signs everywhere. Excuse me, all by design. All by design. So, 33 trillion national debt at the time. So I'm painting a picture for everyone. Back 5 years, because this is the time to be painting it. April, exactly 5 years ago. Okay, oil plummets minus $38 a barrel. There's a $33 trillion debt. It's up to about 38. I don't know, 39, something like that now. But they had no way of paying that debt. So then we come to think about the wealth, the lucrative fact, or the lucrative wealth that's withheld in a birth certificate estate trust instead of KVI trust, just one trust. So the way I explain it to the Commonwealth countries, because they're the former Commonwealth, it's all been dissolved. But every single person, being a corporation, a legally defined corporation, every single person is entitled to their share of the Commonwealth. So a boatload of iron ore, coal seam gas, uranium leaves our shores. The tangible wealth comes back to the bean counters in Canberra each week, each fortnight, whatever it is. They total those checks each week, and then divided by 26 million Australian persons, and it's floated on the US stock exchange. And those birth certificate state trusts just get bigger and bigger, massive. They're just incomprehensible how big they get. They get into their billions of dollars for one person after 75 years, they mature. So, where am I going with this? I reckon they're cashing in birth certificate estate trusts. They can't cash them in without a death certificate. Okay, and why do I reckon that? Why do I think that? I have an Australian law book here. I've read it many times, I'll read it again because it needs to be read over and over. People really need to have this sink in, because if Australia is a corporation, this was printed in 1946, well before 1973 when we had a takeover, so people can get their timelines in their head, So this book was printed in 1946, knowing that Australia is an American corporation. Okay, because you have the same deal, you have the same problem, it's the same but different. This is why we followed the American politics so closely, because we knew it was same but different. We had to translate the difference, because you've had the so-called Civil War, which changed a lot of aspects to your public common law and our sui generis common law. So anyway, I'll read straight from this book. It's called The Elements of Roman Law by R.W. Lee, printed in 1946, and this is in the Law of Persons. Rights of masters over slaves. Slavery implies complete disability, personal and proprietary. The master could exercise over the slave the power of life and death. And everything acquired by the slave was acquired for the master. A rule formally qualified that the slave was held in usufruct. Usufruct, it's on the back of your Apple computer. Usus fructos, to use the poisonous fruit. And it's not just an apple on the back of that computer, there's something more important, there's a bite taken out of it. It's the story of Adam and Eve. It's the story of Snow White, the poisonous fruit. They tell us over and over and over. The symbology of usufruct is everywhere. It really is. If you haven't got your head around usufruct, usufruct. Quite literally, it's very, very important that everyone gets their head around usufruct. So important, in fact, I'm going to read that paragraph again quickly, if you don't mind. Rights of masters over slaves. Slavery implied complete disability, personal and proprietary. The master could exercise over the slave the power of life and death. And everything acquired by the slave was acquired for the master. A rule formally qualified as the slave is held in usufruct. And the most precious possession a slave could ever give their master is a child. Because they're worth billions of dollars. The potential, they're worth billions of dollars. When Rome began to extend her conquests outside of Italy and to engage in distant wars, there's a vast increase in the slave population. It was practiced to allow slaves to deal with their peculium as their own and to purchase their freedom. They were sometimes highly educated men who held important positions in the economic world or made their mark in literature, art, or science. Was the Roman slave a thing or a person? The answer is he was both. He could be owned and as such was a res, R-E-S. So res is Latin and it means thing. It's an abbreviation of the word resident. So if you're defining yourself as a resident, you're defining yourself as a thing belonging to the corporation. But he was a human being, which legally means monster. Hue of man is not a man. Hue of man means monster. But he was a human being and as such was a person. So if you go back to the Bible makes it very clear, James 2:9, for it's a sin to respect persons. Romans 2:11, for there is no respect of persons with God. Long story short, if you're using the birth certificate to identify yourself, you are legally defined as a person. You're eating the poisonous fruit and you are legally defined as dead on paper. That's why they put the symbolism everywhere, like on the back of your computer with the bite taken out of it. The story of Adam and Eve, the story of Snow White, the whole lot. So it's all there. They had a $33 trillion debt and they've been cashing in their assets, which are their persons. What's a person? Anyone using their intellectual property belongs to them. They can't enslave living flesh. What they can do is enslave a piece of paper and deceive living man to believe that they are that piece of paper. And they'll often say that a police officer will say, point to a picture on a plastic card with driver's license written on it, and they'll say, is that you? And you go, yeah, that's me. And boom, you're in contract. It's called adhesion contract. You're admitting to be their intellectual property. And that's how the trick works. So all the assets that we put in that birth certificate name, from go to woe, everything, you think about it. You think about what you register through the course of your life. You're registering bank accounts. You're registering children. You're registering the birth of children. Children are born. Ships are birthed. You're registering them into schools. You're registering your automobiles. You're registering your homes. You're registering your businesses. Everything in your life, you registered the eyeballs. Register means to give to the king. The redcoats.
To give away, to register, to give away.
To give away, they're giving you liberty. They're not giving you freedom. It's not the Statue of Freedom, boys and girls. It's the Statue of Liberty. Your master's giving you liberty. That's why the Statue of Liberty is out on her own little island and not on mainland America. There's a good reason for that. There's a little laugh at the people from the Masonics, the Freemasons. However,
from the French, who Anna even says, they're not even nice.
No.
No.
No, they're not. So, yeah, they're cashing in the birth certificate of state trusts, and they're doing so quietly. It's, well, not so quietly. We've been on the road a lot this year, and once upon a time we used to go up and down this highway, we'd be passing semi after semi, truck, truck after truck after truck. Now it's ambulance after ambulance after ambulance, or what we call jab cabs or booster buses. just one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. I've never seen so many ambulances and heard so many ambulances in my life. So it's, you know, and because people are so heavily fluoridated, you know, they're using the fluoride toothpaste, they're showering in the hot fluoride, they're, you know, drinking the fluoride water. They are so medicated they can't see it happening all around them. You know, the carnage that's going on. So you know, I just posted something on Telegram the other day. There's a guy reading from his local newspaper. Once upon a time, you'd read the death notices and it'd be 1/3 of one page. And he went through the whole lot, 8 pages of death notices. And he said, no, this is just for a week, everybody, just for a week. It's not for a month. It's death notices for a week. So the last 5 years, this month, April 2020, oil plummeted to minus $38 a barrel. Ever since, they've been cashing in their estate trust, the birth certificate estate trust. And how they do that, they cash it in with a death certificate. So, sorry to be Mr. Doom and Gloom, that's how it is. There's plenty of ways that people are now detoxing the clot shots. That's another story, but that's how they're stealing the land. So basically, they've hocked it all to China because it's all in that, it's all registered, it's all in that all upper caps name, and it's also been bastardised in title case as well, because we're dealing with 2 mafias. We're dealing with the Roman municipal mafia, or governmental service providers, that misaddress us in all caps, and we have the British territorial service providers that misaddress us in title case also. That's another story with the glosser and the excellent work that Eugene is doing over in America. Fantastic man he is. We're following him very closely and very grateful for the work the Americans have been doing. It's allowed us the leverage to work on. You know, you guys are breaking the way through, so to speak. So anyway,